You're listening to Idea Collider, a show that explores the world of asymmetric learning. On this show, I will sit down with pharmaceutical experts and business leaders to discuss how to embrace uncertainty and the different learning style that follows. I'm your host, Mike Rear. Let's get into the show.
Let's go around the table. Let's say who you are, your role at SAI, and maybe what your perspectives are from an individual level on where you think AI best fits the kind of CI model as it stands today. Erik, let's start with you.
Start with me, the oldest, I guess, with the grayest hair. Yeah. As you guys know, I'm the CEO, founder of SAI MedPartners. Been on this journey over, in particular, the last 15 years of building out one of the premier CI companies, if I do say so myself. I think we're probably number one or two in size and sort of scale across the globe in terms of developing CI over many years. So my view is the broadest of all things related to CI and the ancillary businesses that we have begun to build, in particular accelerating over the last few years. And so, when I think about AI, I do think about it very broadly, but what's probably best in my DNA still is the foundational sort of applications of intelligence and technologies to the process of CI, but also interested in some of the other things that we've all been kicking around in synthetic personas and other interesting sort of offensive applications. So yeah, I have the broadest perspective. I'm a little hands-off these days in terms of getting into the weeds and sort of seeing it in action. But my colleagues, Matt and John, and many others, I think have been leading the charge and thinking about how we think about AI across the value proposition that we offer and how we engage with clients.
How do you see AI 2025 and beyond?
I think we are at an inflection point, right? And I just think the acceleration of technologies, which I don't pretend to understand, but, looking at the news and talking to smart people, more importantly, there's a reason why we didn't do anything for a couple of years. I think you used the term strategic hesitation or something like that, in being thoughtful, mindful, pragmatic, not getting caught up in the hype, as you said. But I really, in my bones, believe that it's gaining traction. It will change how we deliver what we do, how we think about our workflows, how we package and disseminate information for clients. And, the testament to that belief is the hiring of Jennifer. And in the short 6 or 8 weeks that she's been here, I've been impressed at the thoughtfulness and systematic review of everything that we're doing, and tremendously excited for what we can do and bring to the party in terms of adding value for our clients by really embedding AI into everything that we do. So yeah, I think 26, 27 will be years of real transformation for sure. And, as I said, we've waited 3 or 4 years to see how this played out, but I believe that now is the time and we are geared up to embrace it.
Thank you, Erik. John, you're next on my screen, so don't mind, I'm going to come to you.
So my experience is starting in 2014, post-PhD and postdoc in the CI world. I joined SAI in 2014, and most of my focus has been on oncology and especially drug development, clinical stage CI, helping companies make decisions of how to develop, when to develop, where to develop, and supporting the strategic decisions that they need to make in order to support commercial decisions, in order to support an effective launch. I am very techno-optimistic when it comes to AI. I believe that AI is going to lead to a fundamental transformation of the CI business. Mm-hmm. I think in a couple of different ways. I think that there is data security and governance that's critical to protect proprietary data from a client perspective. And I think that's going to slowly weed out the less sophisticated CI players. And I think it's also going to enable more rapid responses, deeper analysis, smarter analysis, and an analysis of comprehensive data sets that have so far been prohibitive. And I will talk about some of those today, but I'm excited about what the next couple of years especially are going to look like. We've already begun to adopt many AI technologies, but we've done so in a thoughtful and a careful way because of some of the issues that we've seen in the industry. Hallucinations, over-reliance on AI, and removal of the human from the process. And so we've been careful, strategic, about the implementation of these things. And my view right now is that effective AI implementation to CI is going to be invisible to our clients because they're going to be dealing directly with us, the people that have the expertise, but we're going to be better, stronger, smarter as a result of the AI that enables our effective CI.
Nice. So do you see the kind of responsibility remaining on your shoulders for the kind of ultimate deliverable?
Yes, absolutely. The ultimate deliverable is going to come from the expert CI team that we've put in place that has the knowledge of the space, that understands the technologies, the therapeutic areas. If you are relying on AI to deliver a final deliverable, you're not going to have the best product. You really need that human interface that is able to effectively leverage AI as a tool in order to be a brainstorming partner, in order to help you more quickly process data and to process more data. And even with formatting and design and things like that, just to more quickly deliver typical deliverables within the CI world.
Nice. Matt, you're next on my screen, so I'm going to come to you. That's okay.
Yeah, cheers, Mike. So my career trajectory has been not so dissimilar from John's. So I joined SAI straight out of my PhD back at the end of 2020, straight into a consulting role for the first time. So started at an entry-level position and now I'm a director in the oncology business unit. So I've really seen the perspective of what we do right from the very basic level all the way up to now a leadership level. And my current day-to-day is doing a combination of managing projects, but mainly overseeing projects. And like John said, really serving as a thought partner for our clients. I think what's been interesting is that we've been following, like Erik and John both mentioned, we've been following AI since it started coming up as a main central topic towards the end of 2022. I think one of the things that we initially realized is that this clearly is going to have the profound impact on how we do CI, but it's also important to not move too fast, because if we can't get the safety right, we can't get our clients' trust in place, nothing else moves, right? And so what we've been really doing over the last 2-3 years is really trying to understand where we see the artificial intelligence moving, and more importantly, how we can then implement that technology as it improves and grows into our practices so that we're operating in a way that we're making ourselves the most useful for our client. In other words, like John said, we're not overly relying on the artificial intelligence, but we're also not under-relying. We're having that good mix of the human interaction, the human thought partner, obviously the primary intelligence that we gain, but using artificial intelligence in a way that allows us to be not just more efficient, but also allows us to access information in a way that is faster and more efficient than it otherwise would be, which allows us to therefore build implications and analyses on top of that previously would not have been feasible in that kind of time frame.
Excellent. So there's a kind of just doing what we do now more efficiently, faster, but also looking at things that we couldn't do today if we tried. Is that where your head's at?
Exactly, yeah. I mean, there are certain things that theoretically, with enough time, anything's possible. But realistically, when you're looking at certain tasks, to do an analysis can take a very, very long time and require a lot of people to do it, because you simply have to just access lots of information from lots of different sources, put it into one place, and then analyze that information. We still have to do the analyzing part. Artificial intelligence can't do that for us. Even if it gets hypothetically very intelligent, it just doesn't have the context that we have. It hasn't had the conversations with key opinion leaders and other sources. But what it can do is get that information into one place quicker than humans would otherwise be able to do it. So it allows us to therefore build that analysis in a way that previously would have theoretically been feasible, but would have taken orders of magnitude longer and much more effort in order to do that.
Fantastic. Lucia, do you mind if I come to you? You're from the idea side, the strategic side. How do you tell us more about your role and where you're seeing AI today?
Yes, so my name is Lucia. I'm an analyst at Idea Pharma, where we do strategic consulting rather than a focus on CI as much. But I think it's a great point what Matt, you've mentioned of, starting from an entry-level job where perhaps 2-3 years ago, what today takes me 10 minutes with large language model would have taken a whole day. So I think AI having an impact in CI and in rather broader companies is, redefining what an entry-level job is, and like what the structure of that company is going to be about. So I think that's for sure one of the key areas. I think another exciting area in the coming 2-3 years is going to be not only these process optimizations, but more so simulation. So having this AI agent where you can try and see where your competitor is going to be playing out. And I think this is going to be very interesting to see in certain workflows that we do, competitor wargaming and such, where you'll actually have trial simulations and more complex things playing out as well.
Nice. Thank you so much. And Jennifer, if you don't mind me coming to you you've been well trialed here. Do you want to tell us more about who you are and what you're hoping to do at SAI?
Yeah, Jennifer Preston. As Erik mentioned, I'm fairly new to SAI. I am the VP of AI strategy. So as that title alludes to, and me being new, we are, as a company, focusing more and more on AI and understanding how that strategy fits into the broad perspective of SAI MedPartners and all the different divisions, not just the, SAI CI team. I think about AI in CI specifically, one of the things I've always understood with CI, I've been in the business of intelligence for a while, is it's an art as well as a science. So you have the scientific component of it, where you're looking at, summarizing information or capturing that, kind of as Matt mentioned, it's that data collection that you couldn't do before, that volumes of data that you couldn't analyze before. But it's those knowledge that you have, the tone that you hear at an investor call or read through something. It's those little things that you pick up as you grow through the business, as you understand, that makes that the art, right? It's intelligence. You're not going to be able to know everything. That's the point. You don't know it. You have to infer it. And the computers today, and even the best models that are out there, they can make inferences, but not with that full variety and that full volume of information and different connections. That is actually a limitation of them, that they cannot make all of those connections. Part of different world, part of different tones, things like that today. But I will say what excites me, I think, Lucia, you alluded to one of my favorite things, is being able to model out different scenarios, being able to think about different ways, being able to look at all of this different data. And as a person who's really into the therapeutic area and understands this, making all of those different connections in your head and elevating that creativity. We're going to be able to do 10x. We're going to be able to think bigger. We're going to be able to make all sorts of different aspects because of the AI we're building within that work. So our workflow will change. I think, Lucia, you're seeing some of the benefits, or maybe changes. Your workflows will change across the board. What you focus on and how you do it will change, but it's really going to elevate what we're able to deliver to clients, which I think is really exciting for me.
Thank you. Yeah, so maybe a kind of group question. I think that just building off what Jennifer just said about the difference between information and intelligence, and the kind of role of humans in the mix, to understand what was just said when somebody says something, when it wasn't written down. Where do you guys see AI already, making a difference in terms of what you do? In 2025, is there any implementations that you rely upon today?
As I started off saying earlier, I'm the guy with the least hands-on practical experience over the past couple of years as we've been exploring use cases. Matt's been leading an effort sort of company-wide across the CI organization, running training sessions on the use of large language models and chatbots, and really exploring the guidelines and appropriate treatment, as well as the effective use of the technologies. It's all about shifting the continuum of how you spend your time in any given day. Time is the most precious commodity. Time is the real win in terms of reallocating how our smart, talented people with deep therapeutic expertise are spending their days. And the less time, as Matt said, you're spending on aggregation and dissemination of data, to actually thinking about what the heck it means, and more importantly, what it means for the client, and being able to bring in that primary intelligence. And, in the world of CI, there's always this, secondary and primary intelligence. And, we've always talked about how we leverage both of those in an optimal way. And clients really do value secondary information and, combining that effectively with deep insights that you really still can't get. Not everything's in the press. It's in people's heads, and it's in the key opinion leaders that are driving cutting edge developments in therapy areas. And, we as an organization have always been known as the leader in primary insight generation, right? So really being able to get out there and get that color commentary and depth of understanding and that contact sport interaction with thought leaders and other sources of insight. And I, again, defer to Matt or John or others on the specific use cases that we've rolled out and I've seen rolling out in 2025 and what will happen in 2026. But the ultimate win of moving that allocation of time from data collection, aggregation, and dissemination to analysis, interpretation, strategic considerations, and the ability to get the insight from a primary perspective is gold. I mean, that's what this is all about. And I like where we sit in this because we've spent the past 15 years probably building the preeminent primary CI focused organization out there. And I think other competitors of ours have spent a lot of time thinking about AI over the past couple of years and a lot of time thinking about secondary information and how to best aggregate that and package it. And for me, AI has come and just leveled that element of the playing field and helped amplify our strengths in interpretation, strategic consideration, and most importantly, the ability to layer in primary insights to it. So again, a million use cases are coming out, but I think fundamentally, that's what I like about where we are in the evolution of the technology and our ability now to capture that, leverage it, and amplify our strength and what we deliver to our clients.
Yeah, maybe it's a prolate, John. Matt, can you break this down for me about the kind of the roles of primary and secondary intelligence within the industry? Because those are terms that are used every day at CI companies. I don't know whether the market uses the same kind of has the same depth of understanding about what they are.
Yeah.
Who wants to go first?
Yeah, I can comment on that. And I've got an example actually to talk a little bit about how we utilize both of those and how I think AI can accelerate our ability to come up with better answers, better solutions, better strategies than we have been able to do historically. So secondary information, when we use that term, we're talking about information that's in the public domain. Imagine the press release that the company releases, imagine the SEC filing, the patent, even data presentations, like the PowerPoint presentation or the poster that's presented at a conference. There's a ton of information that's in the secondary domain that's considered public information. That information becomes the foundation that we build upon. We will develop key intelligence topics or key intelligence questions anytime we're working with a client. And those topics and questions are areas that we're specifically interested in understanding more about than is available in the secondary domain or in the public domain. And so when we talk about primary intelligence, our primary insights, we're talking about having conversations with individuals that have access to information that is not in the public domain. So this is experience working with a drug, how it works, what sort of safety they're seeing, and which patients would they use it if we're talking to a physician, if we're talking to somebody that's working with a company. What has been the most effective message and what is leading the physicians that you're interacting with as a salesperson or as an MSL to be most excited about this new treatment. There are a lot of different examples of where the conversation with somebody from their experience, the access that they have to information that's not in the public domain helps us to understand better what effective strategies are. So an example of this, one of the key things that we do in the CI world is forecast when competitor trials are going to read out. So there's information that's in the public domain. You can go to clinicaltrials.gov and you can say, look, the primary completion date is December of 2026. Anybody who's spent more than a few minutes in the world of CI knows that that information is very inaccurate. There are actually some companies out there who purposefully put inaccurate information there in order to be a hedge against competitive information in order to help them in that world. So one of the things we try to do is understand and have key assumptions around how long is it going to take for this trial to enroll? When is it going to read out from enrollment completion? And depending on the enrollment pace for this trial, how long is it going to be before we see the primary endpoint, whether it's progression-free survival or overall survival, or depending on the specific trial design? We need to look at benchmarks to understand from earlier stage data, from other phase 3 trials or pivotal trials, how long do we expect for this data to come out? This is where I think AI can be helpful in helping us analyze information. We've sold entire projects looking at specific settings, breast cancer, for example, or novel immuno-oncology combination trials. How long are they taking to enroll? What's driving enrollment? What do we need to do to improve enrollment? We can do an in-depth analysis using these AI tools of when individual sites enrolling on trials finished recruiting, how that impacted recruitment timelines, how number of sites involved in a trial impacted recruitment going back in time. But there's a limit to how much we can actually get from just that secondary analysis, even with the massive amount of data that AI can help us comb through to gather some insights. There are then key questions that come up from this. There's a trial that only has 50 sites. It enrolled faster than the one that had 150 sites. We have to talk to the person that's actually the PI at the site, the PI for the overall trial. Different geographies. What are the factors that actually cause you to recruit to this trial versus the competing trial? Is it the relationship that you had with the company? Is it whether they listened to you or not, or you felt that they were listening to you? Is it a safety event that you experienced? What are these factors, right? Is it that there was a biomarker associated with this one that was very difficult to test and it required a delay before you could actually enroll the patient? The primary conversation built upon the secondary information is what really enables the strategic decision. And so I think that's a helpful example and one that we use all the time. AI helps us make better predictions based on secondary information, but the detailed strategic questions that cannot be answered from public information are critical to address from a primary CI perspective. I think to Erik's point, that's where SAI CI has historically differentiated itself in the world.
Yeah, and I would just jump in and add one more thing to that too. As Jennifer mentioned, intelligence is about interpretation, inference. It is about body language. Somebody talking about a trial, if you're there in person, you have some kind of relationship with a key opinion leader, they can make the same comment about a trial and its status and its direction and its importance, but with a shrug of a shoulder or just a look on his face or the tone of the voice, there's a lot of things you can infer. And, our team is trained and specialized in having these kinds of conversations. So it's not only just about what's not in the public domain. It's about the interpretation of what's in the public domain. It's about the relative perspective that a person has on it. And that kind of stuff is just not, you can crunch all the data you want, but, getting to the right people with the right perspective, having the right kind of conversation. Mike, I always think about, how CI supports the great work that you guys do at Idea Pharma, having, some part of the same team. There's that expression, you want to go where the puck is going, not where it is. You can pull all the data together. And as John said, clinical trials may or not be right. You can get all the databases, put them together, and you get a view of what's happening. You can see what's planned in the domain, planned trials and stuff. But one conversation with a key opinion leader who knows the guys, therapeutic areas become pretty small clubs of people who know things. And, our job is to find those people, have those conversations, and there may be a lot of press around a particular indication, but, you talk to some guys close to it and say, well, that's all nice, but where we're really going is here, and so 5 years out, the standard of care will look very different than the conclusion you would draw by looking at all the publicly available information. So that's the extra value add that primary CI will always add, because the data in the public domain cannot capture all the interpretations, cannot capture the forward thinking, cannot capture some of the conversations that are the ones that are going to drive the actual reality and the outcome. But you'll never get that by what's sort of publicly stated and presented.
Nice. Maybe Matt, any thoughts on primary versus secondary and the humans in the mix?
Yeah, maybe I can comment more specifically on deliverables. I think John and Erik made very good points from a generalized perspective. The point I would make is that I think as a team, our attitude has always been that our clients aren't choosing to work with us because we can magically put things into tables and bullet points and they can't, right? They're partnering us because, first of all, like John mentioned, we specialize in doing primary intelligence and having those conversations. And we also, in a broader context, serve as thought partners. And the reason that we build out parts of our deliverables containing information, like things in tables, like things in bullet points, as it serves as a factual foundation for which we then build our analysis and our conclusions of, and then put that in the context of the primary intelligence that we gain. So our argument is that we can't completely eliminate the amount of time that we spend doing these basic tasks of putting things into tables or whatever it is, but we can reduce it with artificial intelligence, right? And we would argue that it's best to spend as little time as reasonably possible on these basic tasks so we can spend as much time as possible doing that primary intelligence and thinking about those analysis and implications. And this is really where we've been experiencing so far, really where artificial intelligence begins to add its value. Doing those things that, we could do, but this can also help us do it a hell of a lot faster, right? And so we get to the same point a lot quicker, and therefore, rather than just having 3 KOL conversations in the same amount of time, we can have 5, right? Rather than thinking about where do we see this trial going in 3 years from now, and just spending 20 minutes thinking about that, we can spend an hour thinking about that. And I can call up one of my colleagues who's also an expert in that space and have a exchange of ideas. So it really allows us to have a more in-depth analysis and also gain more in-depth primary than would have previously been realistic. It doesn't matter how hypothetically intelligent artificial intelligence gets in the future, it's never going to be able to sit down and have a conversation with a KOL in a corridor at a conference, right? It's never going to Erik's point, it's never going to sit there and understand nuances of body language or some side comment that it made and understand that in the wider context. So Erik made the point that we're really at an inflection point. I couldn't agree more. I think that we're going to start to see an acceleration in the amount of things it can do in terms of these basic tasks. And what that's going to mean is that we have a proportionately higher amount of focus on that primary intelligence and on gaining those insights and on doing that analysis. So I think it's going to be a very exciting next 2 years. And I think it already has been having a large influence on the quality of our deliverables. And I think that's just going to increase in the months and years ahead.
And Jennifer, as an AI expert, where do you see the biggest impact coming from AI in 26 beyond?
I mean, I think turning to their point, like the art part of it is the primary, understanding the inflections, and that's a barrier for AI. It's never going to have that. So that's why you need the person in the loop, right? That's why that's so important to have that understanding of the therapeutic areas, of the industry, of that kind of component. But AI is going to be able to, give new ideas, because as it kind of accelerates and as it grows, it can't have those conversations. It's not going to make those extra connections to a broader landscape. It may not be able to compare as much different therapeutic areas and really understand those nuances, understand the standard of care could change and where it might go in the future based on this latest KOL saying, I want to think through this. But it will be able to enhance that secondary, as Matt keeps saying, enhance that way that I'm not spending my time, or Lucia more specifically, not spending time building those graphs, right? She's looking at those graphs and thinking, which actually really accelerates her growth. If you're thinking about growing the talent, right, in the industry, she's being able to grow faster because she's being able to give it the time to think and become an artist faster rather than having to sift through that science that she would otherwise have to do. So there's a lot of, there are going to be some barriers, right? I think the biggest barrier, I think John mentioned it up front, is going to be data governance and security. Companies that don't get that right are going to be risking not only that secondary information, which is public domain, so that doesn't matter, but it's that proprietary information companies are giving us. It's the key topics and key questions that folks are working with us to develop that are proprietary. And if that gets out, that's a big deal. to mention
Yeah, and that piece about
your proprietary type of information.
and that piece about human creativity. Do you think AI enhances human creativity in this, with these tools?
AI is it can make somebody who is stuck inspired.
Mhm.
You just can ask it a question, and it's similar to, if you use it, in my mind, if you're using it to the best of its abilities, it can be like having a conversation. Let's say, Matt really wants to have that hour-long conversation because he has some time today, but none of his colleagues have that time. He can start thinking about it and typing things into a large language model or some of the other models that are out there and get some ideas. They may not be like talking to a colleague, but they can still inspire him to think different and think bigger and think beyond. I think for a lot of industries, that's one of the exciting things, is it really does enhance that creativity. You see it everywhere, right? People that were thinking they were less creative are having the ability to be much more creative, whether it be music, art, or in CI, right? It's a really cool thing that you can do with these new tools
Yeah,
to
John,
spark that creativity.
John, how do you see human creativity in the CI mix enabled by AI?
I agree 100% with Jennifer. I think that we see a dramatic increase in the creativity. And I think that that's partially driven by the phenomenon that Matt was describing, where you're engaging with the science in a way that enables you to grasp it and think about it and try to make those asymmetric connections, to use your term, Mike, that AI is not going to be able to do. AI is not going to be able to make the connections that you as a human in your experience with your technological and therapeutic expertise is going to be able to make. And so the ability to spend time thinking, to ask questions of AI as a thought partner, as a brainstorming partner, is going to help you as an individual consultant to come up with better ideas and be able to iterate on those ideas. Instead of coming up with an idea and thinking, okay, well, I don't have 3 hours to dive into the data to verify whether or not that's something that could actually help us make a strategic decision. Now you have the ability to spend 15, 20 minutes, maybe even less, to say, pull all of the information related to this. How is this trend related to that? Is this an appropriate benchmark for that? And it just helps you to iterate on creative ideas. You're the one that's making the connection, but then you're building whether or not there's actually any validity to that creative idea using the thought partner of AI. So absolutely, I think it's an inflection point, as we've said many times.
Matt, thoughts on human creativity?
I strongly agree, and I think John hit the nail on the head. The way we work is as a knowledge-based partner, right? The reason that our clients trust us is because we gain knowledge of spaces through a combination of things: publicly available information, conversations with key opinion leaders, conversations with other sources, and there is lots of nuances to that. And a lot of what we do is thinking about, okay, what does all this mean? Now, to John's point, this becomes a lot easier with things like large language models, because it simply serves as something that we can really just bounce ideas off. What could this mean? Could it mean this? Could it mean that? We don't outsource our thinking. That would be crazy. But what it does is it serves as a sounding board for us to really think about implications in a way that would just not practically be feasible before. Like John said, previously, to think about 10 different nuances of how a clinical trial could go would take us like 3 hours. With large language models, we're talking about 15, 20 minutes or so, right? So it really, by literally orders of magnitude, speeds up that thinking process, which of course naturally translates into creativity. So yeah, I strongly agree. I think the increase in creativity and just the increase in sort of depth and analysis, I think, is by far the most profound kind of thing that we've seen coming out of AI so far.
Nice. Let me, Jennifer, a question, because I think this discussion around human creativity is kind of critical to where we are and where we sit with intelligent decisions, with kind of decision intelligence. The interesting thing about the world of pharmaceuticals is it's not used to making very intelligent decisions. Right? It makes decisions based on precedents, but a lot of where SAI is focused, a lot of where CI is focused is on the future. Right? So inevitably, we don't know a lot about the future. What's the role of AI and creativity and thinking about those scenarios, those what ifs of the future? Is it in the ability to create the what ifs, or is it the ability to think them through?
I think AI can help you if you're doing it right. AI can be a digital twin of, say, the brand lead for a different brand, a competitor's brand, and you can have a conversation as if that's you did something and what is their response. Now, that's not going to be their exact response. The world changes. AI is only as up to date as you make something like a digital twin. Or, maybe you look at a patient's journey and you're trying to understand how patients might respond to an MOA. You have a synthetic version of that patient or a synthetic user of that patient, and you understand how an average patient might respond to that new MOA, that new idea. Now, that's not going to give you the full answer, but you can vet those out, think through that averages, run different scenario planning. Both Matt and John alluded to this with their creativity. They're able to think through things. AI can use that, building on those scenarios, help them think through that, really accelerate their processes and make more recommendations and drive some implications, insights, so that leaders of that brand at a pharma company or a biotech company can really be proactive in what they're doing. They're anticipating this is going to happen. They have different scenarios of what it can be, and it's about getting ahead of that and doing something with their brand today that would maybe, mitigate that competitive challenge in the future. And I think that's where there's some really cool tools that I say, maybe 1 to 2 years, 2 to 3 years out, depending upon, some accelerations in the way everything is integrated.
Yeah.
Right. But you're also going to need that technology. Like, technology also is not free. So thinking that this is going to be something that's going to be a lower cost for pharma companies, or, if you think of, a lot of times people are saying it's going to replace headcount or it's going to do things like that. It might replace a person or two, because you don't need 10 Lucias, you might need only 5, but their job is different. And so it's just about thinking how that's going to enhance that. And then you're also paying that extra 5 people for the technology, the tools that you're building, keeping them up to date, the tokens that they are taking up, all that energy, etc.
I wanted to leap into, all of that's true. And you look at companies like Amgen that have got this kind of very bottom-up approach to integrating AI into their workflows and making more efficient. Where do we sit, at SAI? Where does that SAI sit next to the ethics of AI and its implementation? Maybe Erik, you want to start from the top down? Where do you sit next to thinking about this stuff?
In terms of the ethics of the use of AI in our jobs?
Yeah.
I think it's the reality that the technology is here. It's a tool to be used. I don't think large language models have any ethical codes themselves. Right? I think your question is, how do we use it? What are the implications on the organization and the value that we deliver to our clients, I guess. This is why we're so excited to have Jennifer here too, to be, as she said, there are always trade-offs. There's changes in the way our people are going to need to evolve and grow and develop new skills. There's going to be the economics of the cost increases related to the access of technology, and the offset in terms of the human requirements across different job functions to deliver the same thing. So I guess maybe it's a disappointing answer, Mike. I don't really have an ethical perspective on kind of AI per se. I think it's like any other tool, and we are in a competitive market trying to deliver value to our clients, just like the use of the internet came around. So I remember in the 90s when this thing called the internet came out, and it was going to change everything that we did. And why would we need competitive intelligence? Because now all of a sudden everybody had access. And then you had clinicaltrials.gov, and you had the databases. And why would you ever need a company like SAI? Well, we've steamrolled right through that. To me, this is just another step change in technology, another tool that did not exist before. And you either learn how to use it to the benefit of both your clients and your organization and the people, or you don't. And if you don't, you'll be out of business. And that's not a very ethical thing to do for our employees, because we want to be able to provide livelihoods and career development and, everybody contributing. I think, AI from a benefits perspective, we serve a great industry that does have a higher purpose of improving health across humanity. And anything that helps our clients who are driving that make better decisions in the allocation of their resources is going to help people, is going to cure more diseases and so forth. So while we are a small part of this, we ourselves are not curing diseases, but we are partnering with our clients to help. And I think AI will enable us to do that far more effectively. So I think on balance, AI is a good development. And yeah, that's kind of where I stand.
John?
I agree completely with what Erik just said. We're here to help our clients make better decisions, use their resources more efficiently, and help improve healthcare across the board. In order to use AI to do that, you have to understand what its strengths are and what its weaknesses are, and you have to have appropriate protocols in place so that the team knows how to use it. Because Erik's right, there's nothing ethical or unethical necessarily about AI in and of itself. It's a tool. But there are dangers if the team is not prepared, if there are not protocols, if there's not training in order to use it appropriately. Because now if you're asking AI questions that it's not really prepared to do, you're not actually thinking in the way that you need to. You're actually hurting the end goal of helping the client because you're not using AI properly. And so there's significant training that needs to be done here and that we do at SAI to make sure that we're using these tools appropriately. They're embedded in our processes in a thoughtful, strategic way that actually does elevate our insights. It elevates the support that we provide. It gets more bang for the buck from our client partners. I think that's the critical part of it. If we're not leveling up and using this tool and resource to get more bang for our buck for our clients, then there is a question about ethical use of resources and who the best partner is and all of that. So I think that's an important piece of it. I think another piece of the ethics of this is related to proprietary data. And are we upholding our end of the bargain with data security and governance, such that our clients can truly trust us and we are being faithful with the data that they're entrusting us with? So I think there's an ethical consideration there. And as we've spoken about a couple of times on this call, I think that is now an important issue and is going to increasingly become an important issue that does become the threshing floor for a lot of companies working in this space as they implement AI.
Nice. Maybe Matt, then I'll come to Jennifer.
Yeah, I completely agree with John. Our clients want many things. They want things at high quality. They want things with a quick turnaround time. But I can tell you two things that clients don't want. The first thing is they don't want us completely outsourcing our work to an AI because it would just materially decrease the quality of the work. In fact, if you have to have 15 or 20 minutes free and you want to have a laugh, just get AI to try and do one of these decks that we do and you'll see how far short it falls. So that's the first thing our clients definitely don't want us to do. But arguably even worse than that is our clients trust us with lots and lots of sensitive and confidential information, right? And part of our relationship is that they need to know that they can trust us with that information and they can give us stuff and that not ending up somewhere where it shouldn't be. And so this is why when we saw artificial intelligence start coming at a major topic early on in 2023, we made the decision to do quite a lot of proactive hands-on training so that everyone up and down our company was sure exactly how to use these models in an ethical and responsible way. Because if our client sends us, a confidential target product profile or a confidential document about their strategy, they most certainly don't want it sitting somewhere on a server that they have no control over. And even worse than that, they certainly don't want it actually training a large language model on their information. Like I said at the start, we've had a very, very strong focus on making sure that there is no room for doubt from anyone in our company about when to use artificial intelligence, but also when to not use it. Because if we compromise trust, it doesn't matter how good artificial intelligence is. If the trust isn't there, if the safety isn't there, and the ethics aren't there, nothing else moves. We are fundamentally a relationship-based business model. The reason that we have been able to grow and work with our partners for many years is because they trust us. We provide them with honesty. We work in a respectful way. us compromising that to gain a few efficiency gains here and there is just totally not worth it. I think ethics has been, certainly will remain, the central tenet of what we do regarding our artificial intelligence strategy.
Yeah, and Jennifer, clearly it's a so fluid environment. There's a friend of mine who was head of digital at a one of the top 5. She's building a company herself now, and she was surprised to see in the terms and conditions of, one of the major providers of AI, that they would own anything she puts on their servers and in perpetuity. So she's had to build it all herself on her own service, so that anything she's using to train it doesn't become somebody else's property. So how do you see this thing going forwards, especially considering just how much data you guys are aggregating and putting out there?
Yeah, I mean, as they said, one of the key components is that baseline of security and governance, right? Making sure that everybody there understands what can and cannot be put on what AI tool in all this different capacity. Proprietary information is just not put on a large language model. There are terms and conditions within those, even if they're not training itself on different components that just do not align with what we are tasked to do by our clients from a CI perspective. And, as you look forward, building different models, as we think forward for what SAI strategy will be, some of what we build becomes IP of our clients as we move forward and give them. Some of it is still SAI IP. So to that point, sometimes you need to build your own in order to be able to hold that information to you and be able to build some tools and enhance different workflows and change things. And it is something that we're thinking through as the strategy of AI moving forward as to how we want to be able to ensure that we have the right ethics in place and we're using the right tools to align with our client expectations and needs, and being able to enhance our workflows as AI evolves, right? This isn't a static environment by any stretch of the imagination. So how we're using it today, 6 months from now, may change as to how we're using it as a company, just because of different terms and conditions, different security concerns, all sorts of different things that we continue to evolve with and make sure we are always on top of. And is part of my job to ensure that we are always on top of and follow today.
Kind of shifting landscape day by day, week by week. It's impressive. I know we need to close sooner than I like, but to keep this to the hour, maybe just go back around the table, maybe starting with Erik again. Is there anything you're going to, do differently this week than you would have done this time last year because of AI?
I'm a basic user, and AI impact on my life is sort of like your relationship with Grok, except for I happen to, chat GPT-5. Lots of little things that I do actually do have that sort of back and forth with AI. That's the most basic sort of impact on my life, and how this week might be some things done differently than last week. I wake up every day and I spend some part of my day thinking about what is Jennifer up to today and how is she going to make our lives better in 2026. I don't always communicate that to her on a daily basis, but believe me, I think about it every day because it really is going to make a big difference if we get this right or not. So yeah, that's how it touches my world.
No pressure there, Erik.
No.
I didn't say it was the first thing I think about, but at some point every day, I absolutely think about it.
John, anything you're doing different?
Whenever I'm trying to solve a problem, I on a daily basis use AI as a thought partner. I never use AI to give me an answer. I use it as a thought partner to help me think through different ideas, say, what are the asymmetric, what are the out of left field things? What are different ways than the conventional way that we could approach this? How could this aspect of this technology, how could this biomarker that's over here in this cancer type potentially impact treatment paradigms in this other treatment type? One of the questions we're asking right now is, how is AI going to change biomarkers? Because we have AI-driven biomarkers. It's a regular part of, as a thought partner, how I think through those things and how I analyze data in order to validate some of those creative ideas that I'm trying to pressure test.
Nice. Okay, Matt, thoughts?
My answer is pretty much the same as John's. I use it at an increasing amount as a thought partner. Really, since it came out a couple of years ago, I've been doing that. But in the more recent past, as these large language models have begun to improve, for example, with ChatGPT 5, or even this week, in fact, ChatGPT 5.1 or Grok 4, the quality and the efficiency has increased and increased. And so using it more and more as a thought partner, using it more and more to help with basic repetitive tasks. And I think that's just going to continue increasing. My hot take is that in 6 months from now, so it's currently the middle of November, by the middle of May next year, I think there will be more developments in that 6-month period than in all of the last 3 years combined. And in 6 months from now, if I'm wrong about that, please feel free to edit this part out.
No, we'll just highlight it in the next. Okay, with you, and then Jennifer.
I think similar to the others, but for sure an ideation partner. So, those of the crazy ideas you sometimes get, you're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't discuss it with my colleague because it's too wacky. Well, I like to discuss it with ChatGPT. So I think there's really no limits into your ideas, and AI is really going to potentiate that in the future.
Okay, Jennifer, I guess this is a really daft question for you, given it's central to your role, but where are you with AI today that you wouldn't be a year ago?
I mean, I'm all over the place with AI today that I wasn't even a year ago. I've always had an interest in technology tools, but understanding AI and just seeing where it can go and thinking through different things. I use it every day. I don't think a year ago I used it every day. I probably used it a little and had some advantages, but just the leap forward in what it's been able to do in the last year has really changed even just how I've been able to use it day to day, every day. Something new pieces of information drop, there's a new version of a large language model that has a new component to it, or there's a new company that decides to launch something, right? So there's always something every day that I'm investigating. And I honestly use a lot of large language models to do some of that investigation of compare this to this, can give me some ideas behind that. And then you can get down a lot of rabbit holes with AI. That's, I probably go down a lot more rabbit holes than I ever used to, I would say, because of the fact that I have that thought partner and AI have that, person that can help me think through different unique ideas or crazy ideas that are fun.
Yeah, so now we've always had this kind of idea about the only stupid question is the one that you didn't ask. I now have Grok on my action button on my iPhone just to ask it like 50 questions a day about stupid stuff. I used to use my colleague Alex all day long for that kind of thing about, why does this work that way? And he'd come up with a really intelligent answer. Then you go, yes, but. And then you get into this really interesting space that you wouldn't have got to otherwise. So, that we talk about decision intelligence a lot, but those decisions need to be better informed than they could possibly have been a year ago. So that's kind of where I see this coming out. Folks, I know we could have gone on for 2 more hours, but I want to thank you for going around the subject of CI and AI in CI. What an exciting place to be. So thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Mike.
Everybody.
Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
That's it for this week's episode of Idea Collider. To continue the conversation, visit our website at ideapharma.com. Follow us in your favorite podcast app so you never miss an episode. Don't forget to rate and review us on Apple Podcast. Until next time, I'm Mike Rea, wishing you great success.